Hey, everybody, Keith Niebuhr and Nick Della Torre of Gators Online for this edition of Talking Gators. And we got a good one because, as everybody knows, the Florida Gators football season begins Thursday night in Salt Lake City. It's a huge game. Florida at Utah. It's their third meeting. And the last two were memorable, particularly last season's game. But this is really just a game that a lot of the country is going to be watching and kicking off a season of, I don't know what to say. A season of uncertainty for the Florida Gators, I guess, is the best way to put it. And so Nick is going to go over his 5 bold predictions for the season. And Nick's covered the team for over a decade. He knows the ins and outs of this team. He knows the ins and outs of the program. He's got a great perspective, a great feel for history and nostalgia within the program too. And most of all, he kind of knows what the fans are thinking. And so Nick, let's get right to it. 5 bold predictions. And look, you said it yourself. You didn't want these predictions to just be anything. You wanted them to be bold. That's the reason you call them bold. But gosh, how many times have we fallen for it? We've clicked on a story and it says bold predictions, and there's really nothing bold about them. But Let's get started. Number 1 for you, you're predicting during this 2023 Florida football season, coming off of a 6-7 year. And by the way, I've done all the talking, so I got to let Nick do some here. Coming off of a 6-7 year. Bold prediction number 1, the Gators will beat Tennessee at home on September 16th. Nick, why and how? What makes you think that that's going to happen?
The easy answer is Tennessee struggled in the swamp, but I think it goes deeper for me. I won't go and ruin our prediction because you'll have to wait for that on the Gators Online show later this week if I think Florida will beat Utah. But I think if Florida beats Utah, you're looking at 3-0 with a win over Tennessee in the swamp. If Florida comes into that game 2-0, that place is going to be wild. I've said this before. College football is a religion in the South, and they will start taking Holy Communion at 8 a.m. in the form of alcohol on Saturday, and that place will be a madhouse by 7 p.m. when the ball kicks off. I look at Josh Heupel, and I think he's been a great addition for Tennessee. They're recruiting fine, but his offense is really quarterback friendly. And you got a ton out of Hendon Hooker last year. With that being said, I saw Joe Milton as a junior in high school at Friday Night Lights. I saw Joe Milton at Michigan. I've seen Joe Milton at Tennessee. Joe Milton's not Hendon Hooker. And if Josh Heupel somehow makes Joe Milton look like Hendon Hooker looked last year when he was healthy, then give him a 40-year contract. I don't believe in Joe Milton. I don't believe in the hype. I think he went to the Anthony Richardson school of offseason hype. You're seeing him do some backflips. He's throwing the ball 80 yards in the air. He's throwing the ball 60 yards off a knee. Obviously, physically, he is a very talented and gifted person. I just don't believe in him as a quarterback. And I think Florida might not even be favored in that game at home, depending on how the first 2 weeks go of the season. But I've got Florida pretty sharpied into a win in that game as we sit here, a few days from kickoff for the season.
Well, that's the definition of bold because not many people are predicting that, even though the game's at Florida Field, a place where Tennessee, save a few wins, has struggled mightily historically. That's big. That would be significant for this program. You have to feel like
it would be probably a top 25 win for Florida.
You have to feel like if they can come out of these first 3 games 2-1, 3-0, then you're going to have a winning season. And then at that point, your goals start to change as a fan. Like, the team's thinking they're going to win every game. That's how every team thinks. But as a fan, I think mostly what we're seeing is between 6 and 8 wins. Well, if you win those first few games, or come out of that first batch of games with a fairly good record, that might change the outlook. All right, Nick, next up, Austin Armstrong. He's a 30-year-old defensive coordinator for the Florida Gators, was actually hired at the age of 29. He was the defensive coordinator at Southern Miss last year, had a cup of coffee in Tuscaloosa as an assistant coach there before Billy Napier went and grabbed him away from Nick Saban in the tie. But the guy's got a great track record. Our coworker, Zach Albaverdi, did a great feature on him a few weeks ago. This guy's got an unbelievably sharp football IQ. The last time Florida had a coordinator this young, Nick, it worked out quite well. Mike Shanahan from 1980 to 1983 and ended up winning a couple Super Bowls, becoming a superstar in the NFL. But he was a young offensive coordinator, and he had been briefly at Minnesota as OC before getting the job at Florida. Well, Austin Armstrong was briefly the DC at Southern Miss. And here's your prediction. Austin Armstrong's defense at Florida will end up in the top 40. Now, look, in the country, now, Nick, I got to tell you, like 25 years ago, top 40 would have got you fired, okay? Now, it's like, oh, God, can we please be in the top 40? I'm like, God, somebody please. But this isn't the Florida Gators defenses of old. And I don't mean Urban Meyer, Steve Spurrier. I'm talking 80s defenses, which lit people up. But top 40, that's a bold projection because they weren't top 40 last year, Nick.
No, Florida was 97th in total defense last year. Obviously, massive issues. They were ranked 129th out of 131 teams on third down. I think Florida is going to, and I wanted to, after looking into Austin Armstrong, don't have Todd Grantham flashbacks. This is going to be a very aggressive defense, and you're going to give up some huge chunk plays. Guys are going to mess up in a coverage. If you're bringing 8 on 3rd and 9 and you don't get to the quarterback, you're probably going to give up a big play. Florida's going to do some of that. But what I do see from Austin Armstrong's defenses at Southern Miss is that aggressiveness leads to havoc. It leads to turnovers. It leads to sacks. I think Florida's going to take a big jump in sacks. I think you'll see a bunch of turnovers for this defense. So you kind of have to take some good with some bad. But I think Florida being 97th in the country last year in total defense is kind of an outlier. And I think I would have been taking a safe road, Keith, to say top 60, top 50. But we're trying to make them bold, and I'll go top 40. And, of course, at the end of the year, I'm sure you'll make me take my medicine and rehash all of these. But fans will hope that I'm not having to take my medicine on this one, I'm sure.
I'm sorry. Did you say 97th in total
97th
defense?
in total defense last year.
Me. At the University of Florida, how does the talent get to that point? I mean, again, I was covering another program the last decade. I just can't believe that. That is unfathomable and, quite frankly, unacceptable. And that's not an indictment against this staff. That's an indictment against the people that built that defense.
Todd Grantham's defense that helped get Dan Mullen fired was 51st the year before. So yeah, 97th, intolerable, unstomachable.
Well, nobody likes to look at the star rankings and all that stuff, but you weren't seeing these dominant. Granted, Gervin Dexter, I think, was a 5-star in high school, but you just weren't seeing those big recruiting wins in recent years on the defensive side of the ball that we were used to seeing. And you looked across the field last year, and again, me doing it from afar, you doing it up close, and God, there just weren't there. I mean, I'm used to seeing Wilbur Marshall, Kevin Carter, Javon Curse, Tim Beauchamp. I mean, you know what I mean? Like across the board. So that's a bold projection. I like what you're thinking there, Nick. That would be significant because you think about it. Billy Napier keeps harping on the fact that they lost a lot of 1-touchdown games last year. They also won a few too, by the way. So it does go both ways. But, a jump that significant. And then if they improve on 3rd down defense too, let's say, I mean, some of these games come down to 3, 4, 5 plays. And all of a sudden, maybe you're winning those games. And I've personally seen defenses that weren't world beaters help carry teams or help. In other words, they didn't kill the team. They didn't kill the rest of the team. They were just good enough. They made just enough plays, Nick.
Will Muschamp survived as long as he did because of defenses like that. Yeah. My goodness, those offenses, you were like, if you could just get a couple of JV high school teams together to have a better offense than Florida, this defense is a national championship caliber defense.
We think Florida's going to be able to run the ball. They've got some good young receivers. Now, how long it takes for them to get going, we're going to get into that in a minute. But the defense, look, nobody here thinks, I don't know anybody that thinks this team's going 12-0. But to get to that 6, 7, 8 win group,
Mark,
you've got to be better than 97th. I mean, they went 97th last year and won 6 games. So it stands to reason, top 60, top 50. Gosh, then maybe you're winning some of these games. And you're right about one other thing, Nick. A defensive touchdown is so huge, right? Because sometimes they happen when the other team's getting ready to score, okay? So you're talking about 14-point swings, and we don't know what the identity of this team's going to be yet. We might not know for a few months, but that would be significant. All right, I'm going to do the order a little differently than what you sent to me, Nick, and save what was your third one for last. But next up, your bold prediction a freshman wide receiver makes the all-freshman SEC team. Now, I had a story over the weekend about I took the greatest receivers in school history and went back and looked at what they did as true freshmen. It's a mixed bag. I mean, it really is. I mean, Wes Chandler, who I think most people would say is probably a top 3 receiver in school history, top 10 in the Heisman, NFL All-Pro, NFL leading receiver, NFL Offensive Player of the Year. He had 4 catches as a freshman. Okay, now it was a wishbone offense, but he had 4 catches. Chris Collinsworth came in as a quarterback, probably one of the 5 best receivers in school history. He had no catches as a freshman. The other side of that is Ike Hilliard, Riddell Anthony had 52 catches between them in 1994, and they became All-Americans. And another one, I'll give you a good one here for recent memory, Percy Harvin. In 2006, he was absolutely phenomenal as a freshman. Over 400 receiving yards. I want to say over 500 rushing yards. He did a little bit of everything, but the opportunities there. I've been reading all your write-ups and all of Zach's write-ups, and boy, the returning receivers, they haven't exactly, other than Ricky Pearsall, they haven't really, they haven't been world beaters so far. You never know what's going to happen. So the opening there for these guys. Now they got 3 sorry, Nick, they got 3 special receivers, we think, that have come in this freshman class. And I'm going to let you talk about them right now.
Yeah. I mean, you've got Andy Jean, Trey Wilson, Aiden Mizell, 3 guys who have all the opportunity in the world. And I think a lot of Gator fans might not think that this is a bold prediction because they expect these guys to do so much. But if you look at what you wrote this week, Keith, it's hard for a freshman to make that kind of impact. They're kind of few and far between. And then if you look at our On3 industry rankings last year, you have to go down a while before you find Eugene Wilson. And we were higher on Eugene Wilson as, naming him a 5-star. So I think there's guys, that are going to be in the SEC at other schools, at an Ole Miss, who's going to throw the ball a lot more, at an Alabama, who's going to throw the ball a lot more than Florida, that will have more opportunities than Florida's guys. But I think if you look at the receiver room, Ricky Pearsall is your only bona fide proven receiver that can make an impact, that has made an impact. You can write his name down. You feel good about Ricky Pearsall changing games for you. Can Caleb Douglas be that? We've written about him a ton. We think he can. Jaquavion Frazier has been in school a long time. Can the guy that they call Baby J, can he be that? I don't know, but I do know that there's 3 freshmen, 2 have been here since the spring, 1 that's been in the fall. And when I look at Florida with Cam Carroll going down, Trevor Etienne was one of the starting kick returners. I'd rather have Eugene Wilson back there. Probably faster, certainly shiftier, and not as important to the offense as one of your 2 best running backs. So I think Eugene Wilson might be the one that I peg. I'm not going to put myself into a hole. Nobody puts baby in a corner here, Keith, especially myself. But I think Eugene Wilson, with his roles on special teams, punt return, kick return, and then the opportunities when you move Ricky Pearsall out to the outside to the X or to the Z receiver spot, you can slide Eugene Wilson in. Ricky Pearsall is going to command attention. And I think Eugene Wilson is a guy that I would earmark as someone who can have that kind of Percy Harvin-like impact. Not necessarily he is Percy Harvin, but you can get him carries, you can get him on special team, and you can throw him the ball, kind of a Swiss Army knife, which Percy was his whole career, but obviously as a freshman as well.
Well, and not only with Eugene can you get him the ball in different spots, he can take it to the house from anywhere. And I think so. You say, okay, well, a freshman, first of all, we don't know how much Florida's going to throw. We don't think they're going to throw 38 times a game, though. So you got to split catches up with other guys, first of all. Running backs probably be catching the ball a little bit more as well this year, too. So, 20 to 25 catches is actually a lot for a freshman. Like I said, Riddell Anthony had 30 in the fun and gun offense. Now, he also had Jack Jackson on the team. He also had Chris Doring on the team. He also had Ike Hilliard on the team. Travis McGriff was a young player. I mean, Jaquez Green was a freshman as well that season. So, but he had 30 catches, and that was considered really high. So what do you do with those 20 to 25 catches? Is it 8 yards a catch, or is it Wes Chandler range or Lee McGriff range? Nick, 20 yards a catch? That gets you on the all-freshman team, but he's certainly got a lot of ability. We know that. All right, next up, special teams. So we talked earlier about Billy Napier saying that, they lost all those close games last year. And again, like I said, they also won a few close games. And so a lot of these big games, SEC is like playing in the NFL. They come down to just a few plays, a possession here, a possession there, whatever. And so special teams is where you can really win and lose games. I mean, that's great kicks, a 7-yard better average in net punting than the team you're playing. That stuff adds up, right? And you're predicting a special teams touchdown for the Florida Gators this year. I mean, just one? It's been a while, obviously, since they had one.
It's been a desert. We've been wandering 40 years through a desert, Keith.
Pretty sad when one is a bold prediction, but it's bold nonetheless. So what gives you that confidence? Who do you think is going to score? How do you think it's going to happen? I think they score more than one, by the way, but blocks and all that stuff. But tell me how it goes down, Nick.
Well, they haven't blocked many kicks either. Florida's special teams last year were pretty atrocious. Nothing really to write home about. I think at one point of the year, Florida was so bad on a kick return as a kick return unit that even when they would get a good return past the 25, there would be a holding or a block in the back. And at one point, I think I wrote in my column, please just stop catching the ball at all. Just fair catch it. Just take your 25. You're killing yourself. This year, I think you've got guys. I mentioned Eugene Wilson already. Put him on any kick, punt, return. Ricky Pearsall is pumped to return kicks. I think he means too much to you. He had the concussion last year in a loss to Vanderbilt. And I don't think you can afford to lose Ricky Pearsall. You've got 3 great freshman receivers, guys who I think are game changers. I think Eugene Wilson's a guy I would put there. I would like to see them dial up more pressure, try to block a punt, try to block a kick. But I think that you've got playmakers there that maybe you didn't have or you weren't using. And I think Florida's last kick return touchdown was Kadarius Toney in 2020. It used to be a staple. And coming off of watching Swamp Kings, the special teamers, and obviously there was Urban Circle of Trust, which we learned about there. Or not learned about, but heard about firsthand. Special teamers ate first. You put your Jeff Demps, who was, almost on the Olympic team, was a guy that was on your special teams. You put your best athletes on special teams. So I want to see Florida make that kind of emphasis on special teams because it can turn and completely sway games. And it has for Florida negatively the past several years. And I would like to see them turn that into a positive.
Nick, Florida conceivably could have an excellent running game. Big plays. They could get some big plays out of the passing game. Graham Mertz could set the world on fire. But these are all unknowns. The one known is we know these running backs are good. However, it's a pretty much rebuild offensive line, so we don't know how that's going to work out. So with all those unknowns, I kind of disagree with you here. I like having Pearsall returning kicks. You hope to God he doesn't get injured. But the reason being that yards are at such a premium, I feel like he's a guy as shifty as he is. He's a natural punt returner. A guy that can get you 10, 12, 14, 15 yards here or there. And to me, that makes all the difference in the world for the Florida offense because we hope that big plays are going to, you hope Eugene Wilson can have big plays, but we don't know. What I do know this is teams that have to go 15 plays consistently to cover 75 yards ain't winning many games in the SEC. You better get some chunk plays, and chunk plays include special teams. So that would be where I would disagree with you on that. But and also I would point out that arguably the greatest punt returner in school history, I guess Brandon James was pretty damn good too, right? But I want to say Ricky the Rocket Nateel, I think once maybe led the country in punt returns, and he also was a terrific receiver in the 1980s for Florida and for many years in the NFL as well. All right, Nick, last bold prediction. I think in the spring, Gator fans are thinking, oh, God, 4 or 5 wins. And then as you get closer to the season, you start drinking the Kool-Aid. We're all guilty of this. Whatever team we like, whatever team we follow, we tend to overlook some of the deficiencies and look more toward the positive stuff. And I think now people are starting to think, okay, let's see what happens this first game. Winning season's possible. But your bold prediction says it's not only possible, it's going to happen. Florida's going to finish with the winning record. That means – do you mean 7-6 with the bowl, or do you mean winning record in the regular season, which would be 7 wins in the regular season? And what gives you that confidence that they're going to do?
Well, I'm going to go. That was a 12-game prediction, just regular season, and the confidence is I've been drinking since 8 a.m. this morning, Keith. That's what the confidence is from. No, I think when I looked at the schedule in this, or probably when I looked at the schedule before last year, before Cam Rising was hurt. before all of this non-answer, is he going to be cleared? Is he going to play 7 months after ACL surgery? Is that even the real Cam Rising that's playing against you? What percentage is he at? Can he run? He almost ran for 100 yards against the Gators last year. I think that game now, this Thursday, looks more winnable. McNeese is winnable. I already predicted that they beat Tennessee. Then you beat Charlotte. That's 4-0 already. You would have to have a massive snafu to go to finish 4-8. At Kentucky's going to be hard. Vanderbilt should be a win. I think at South Carolina should be.
Hold on, did you say snafu? I think you mean complete collapse. But go ahead. Let me interrupt you. You go on.
It would be doomsday to start 4-0 and then finish 4-8. I think South Carolina's a win. Now, this is where I think the schedule gets really tough, and why I think Florida has to start strong. If you start 4-0, you're feeling good about yourself. I don't think I will predict Florida to win at Kentucky. Fans won't like to hear that. I think Mark Stoops has coached circles around the last 2 Florida coaches who have been offensive guys. But when you get to this second part of the schedule, Georgia, that's a loss. I don't have a conceivable way for Florida to beat that Georgia team in Jacksonville on October 28th. Arkansas returns the most veteran quarterback in the SEC in KJ Jefferson. They're going to play a smash mouth, physical brand of football. At LSU, that's a brutal game. At Missouri, Missouri's not going to be good. Florida might be 6-4 by the time they get to Missouri. That screams 11 a.m. November 18th in Columbia, Missouri is going to be cold. There'll be 30,000 people there. Bring your own juice. I've seen Florida lose that game in the decade plus I've spent covering them, Keith. I don't think they should lose it, but I've seen Florida lose that game. And then you get Florida State, who I think some people are predicting to be in the playoffs. So I think it's very important for Florida to get off to a hot start, but they win on the road at Utah, I think gets your confidence up and gets the ball rolling.
Nick, I've seen Florida in my extended lifetime, as you continually remind me. I've seen Florida lose a lot of cold weather games. In fact, one of the greatest things to ever happen to Florida football, Steve Spurrier hired, Urban Meyer hired. I'll give you another one nobody ever talks about. Florida used to play Kentucky in late November every year. Every single year. And in the early 90s, that changed. Okay. And what happened? Florida won 30 games in a row against Kentucky. But in the 70s and 80s, it wasn't all guineas. In fact, that last win for Kentucky and Lexington before they ran off this recent string was 1986, and they beat Florida 10-3 on a frozen field in Lexington. So you're right. Playing an early game in Columbia is absolutely dangerous. And the other thing is, if you don't start fast, so this is a young team, Nick. The presumption is these young guys are going to get better as the season goes on, right? And the transfers, the chemistry, all that's going to get better as the season goes on. But one thing can derail that. When you start losing, it gets up here. You may be talented at 4-6 and just had some bad breaks and played a tough schedule, but in your head, you still know you're 4-6, and sometimes you play like you're 4-6. So get off to a good start, go into that FSU game with a winning record, and you will have passed a major test. And if you can go into that game with a winning mark, there's no reason to think you couldn't beat an FSU team that even might only have one loss or none or two because of the difference in schedule. So, we'll see. At least you'd be able to give them a game at home. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. The key to this whole season, to me, is getting off to a good start, a respectable start. I think even 3-2 out of the first 5, you can live with that. You'll have played 3 really good, what we think, potentially 3 solid teams. And hey, we're going to get better as a team. But should you lose all 3, Kentucky, Tennessee, Utah, and you've only beaten Charlotte and McNeese, where's the confidence going to come from? Where's the, you know what I mean? Does self-doubt creep? All that stuff, all those that ugly bag of snakes that can really make a season more difficult than they already are. Anyway, 5 bold predictions. Nick, I've got a bold prediction. Gators Online is going to have outstanding coverage this week of the Florida-Utah game leading up to it. In fact, you and Zach Albaverdi have already had a ton of stories. We got more coming this week. The 3 of us are heading out to Salt Lake on Tuesday morning, bright and early, and we look forward to doing a lot of videos out there, really setting the scene, putting the Gator fan in Salt Lake City for those of you who aren't going to be able to make it. So go to GatorsOnline.com for the latest in Florida Gators team and recruiting insight, intel, and all-around coverage. Right now, you can join for 1 year and it's half off. So go check it out, gatorsonline.com. I'm Keith Niebuhr. That's Nick Delatorre. And this was Talking Gators. Take care, everybody.